So my name is Taylor, and I live in a camper with my 3 dogs, Zelda, Naya, and Ezio. Okay, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit as I get used to this recording process, getting used to talking to myself in front of my dogs who are watching me and like, what the heck are you doing? And just getting to learn the software that I'm using to edit this podcast. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my dogs, all 3 of them, and their stories and how they came to me, and also how and when I decided to live out of a camper. I'll talk about Zelda. She is my red Siberian Husky. She is 1 year and 9 months, and her birthday's in February, and I'm really excited for her to turn 2. I don't know why, don't ask me. I'm really excited for her to be no longer considered a puppy. So I got Zelda last March, I believe. I got her when she was 3 months, and I got her through a breeder. But before I even get into that, I had searched for Huskies, and I had searched for different breeds. I thought that I was going to get a different breed because Huskies are notoriously a harder dog to have as a pet. And so I had been looking at German Shepherds and hunting breeds, so like German Shorthair Pointers, and honestly, I don't even know. I didn't look at hunting breeds for that long, which I'm going to be honest here. Looking back at this, those breeds are not necessarily easier than Huskies. They just are different. But I had settled on a German Shepherd mix, actually, through a rescue. She was 4 months at the time, and my heart was set on her, and I was ready to adopt her, and the rescue told me, no, you can't adopt her, you don't have a fence. And at the time I was living at my parents' house, and they have a decent amount of property, but no fence around it. And so I was like, well, none of these rescues are going to adopt me because I don't have a fence, which a lot of rescues are changing that, which is kind of awesome. But at the time, a lot of these rescues hardcore require a fence, so I did not have that. I couldn't go through a rescue. And I was like, well, I've always wanted a Husky, and Huskies are notoriously harder to train off leash, but I was like, we'll go for it. It'll be fine. And I researched for quite a while, looking at different breeders in my area, and settled on a breeder up in Minnesota. And I'm not going to say the breeder's name because she's a great breeder for pet home dogs, but I wouldn't personally go back to her, and at this point in time would not recommend her. So I got Zelda. She was 3 months at the time. She was the last of her litter to leave, and it was between her and her sister, but at the time of picking her up, it was just her. And the night that I picked her up, she was crazy insane. She was a little puppy doing zoomies around the house. I couldn't even catch her to put her collar on. It was insane. I got her during finals in my junior year of college, which was maybe not the smartest move, but I was already stressed out, so what's a little more stress? And it was great. She is an amazing dog. I have trained her to be off leash, and she is like my smartest dog, and I am just so happy with her. Fast forward to this spring, I had been talking to someone about adopting a second dog, and I had wanted a second dog because I wanted Zelda to have just a companion outside of a human, which is me. I had been looking at this dog it was just some guy looking to rehome his dog. It was an Australian cattle dog named Scout. He was a really sweet dog, and him and Zelda met, and the first time they did pretty fine meeting with each other. They weren't like super interested in each other, but they weren't like opposed to each other. And I actually went back and had them meet again, and they got into a really big fight over a bone. And I just kind of brushed it off as, well, we're on his territory. He's resource guarding a very high value treat. It's not like that's something that I can control. So I actually brought Scout home for a night, And the entire car ride there, I had them kenneled luckily, but he was trying to get at Zelda, and it was like a 2-ish hour drive, I think, if I remember right. He was trying to attack Zelda through the kennel. I was like, well, he's really stressed. I shouldn't have brought her with. This is my fault. It'll be okay. I get home, and I kennel them in separate spaces so that they can just calm down and be away from each other for a little bit, because that's a lot of contact with a brand new dog that you don't really know. And it ended up not working out, and I'm still heartbroken about it. I feel like I'm responsible for the damage that has been done, but it's hard, and I think that I made the right decision. So what happened is on the day that I brought Scout home, he actually had attacked Zelda and got her in the face pretty good. And the whole entire time that I had him home, and they were separated and couldn't even see each other, but the entire time he was trying to attack her and kill her. And I guarantee had they been allowed access to each other, he would have got her. And she was my little baby puppy, and she's everything. So it just didn't work out. That same week that I had returned him, because I returned him the next day after bringing him home, my breeder that I had gotten Zelda from texted me and said, hey, I know you've been looking for a second dog. We had a 7-year-old female husky returned. And I was like, well, I have a spot open for another dog. It's worth a shot. If it doesn't work out, it's fine. And so we go up to meet this dog, and it's on neutral territory because this dog hasn't really been in the breeder's house, and Zelda hasn't been in the breeder's house since she was born. And they just hit it off. I mean, Naya is 7. She's a black and white husky. She is very mellow. She doesn't really require much. And Zelda and her just clung to each other for the first month, I'd say. And then a month in, Naya actually started to have some behavioral issues and fear of men and some other things that we were working on throughout the summer that did get better. Good news is it did get better. But we were working on that. But as that came out, Zelda and Naya just did not really play much. And I'm not expecting Naya to play because she's 7, she's not a puppy, doesn't have that energy that the puppies have. So Naya and Zelda, while they could live together, it wasn't what I had hoped for Zelda. I was looking for a dog that would play with her, get some of that excess energy out, and just for her to bond with another dog. And I've learned a lot about dogs since, even just over the summer. But over the summer, I joined a dog sledding group. They met once a week, and one of the members of this group fosters dogs for a rescue that brings dogs over from Qatar, is how you pronounce it. It's a little tiny country in the Middle East right next to Saudi Arabia, and they specialize in huskies. The name of the rescue is Bark and Q Rescue across the globe. And they bring over huskies because it's incredibly hot over there. A lot of the huskies that come in are taken in by rich people who want this very exotic dog and then realize that they are not really amazing pet dogs, and then they throw them out on the streets where it's super hot. So the rescue brings them over, and Stephanie is one of the fosters for them. And she brought, at the time his name was Odin, this foster dog Odin, to one of the dog sledding meetups. And Zelda just hit it off with him, and they wrestled, and they wrestled hard. I say she literally did not let go of him until I adopted him. Literally with her teeth on his face, would not let go. You would see it and you'd probably think that she's killing him, but I swear it's all just rough play, and she loves him. And he loves her back, and so it was just an amazing match. They're both puppies. They both have the energy to play and keep up with each other, and it's been amazing ever since. And so I changed Odin's name to Ezio. If you haven't noticed, Zelda and Ezio are both video game character names. Naya I didn't rename because she came with her name and she knew it and it was fine. But the puppies both have video game character names because I'm a big nerd. And it all worked out. Okay, but so I skipped over to the part that I hadn't been living in a camper at the time that I got Zelda. I knew that I had always wanted to do this tiny home lifestyle. Originally, I had thought that I would live out of like a big tiny house, like the big ones that you see. But as I did more and more research, I realized how not mobile they are. It's more of you get this house, you park it in a tiny house community typically, and then you stay there. And that's great. That's amazing for some people, but I am a huge introvert. I don't really like people that much, and I do really like adventuring and exploring. And so I stumbled across van life and camper life. And specifically, there is a couple, Elsa, Ray, and Baron Link, I think is his last name, and they live out of a 13-foot scamp. They've been doing this with their dog for a few years, and I've just been following them, enjoying their content, and realized that I can also live out of a camper. And not only that, but I can live out of a camper that is super small with 3 dogs. A lot of people think that it's insane, but it works for me. So in the spring of 2020, COVID time, I mean, COVID's still happening now, but it was like real chaotic COVID back then. I bought a pop-up camper temporarily because I needed a space to put all of my dogs. And I got it a little bit before I got Naya. So I started out with 1 dog in the pop-up, and then I got Naya while it was still in the pop-up. But the pop-up, the issue with it is it wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted a hard-side camper. I just needed something for the time being to put me and my dogs. And this pop-up was huge. It was like, I think 19 feet, maybe longer, with its beds popped out and open. It was massive and way too big and way too heavy for my car to pull. And so I had been looking at fiberglass campers, and I saw the Scamps and the Casitas, and there's this brand called Burrows. They look kind of neat. But because I live in the Minnesota-Wisconsin area, I am incredibly close to the Scamp dealership. And so there are actually a lot of Scamps around here, which is nice. And the great thing about Scamps is not only are they cheap, but they're incredibly light, so that means that my car could pull it. So I had looked at a few other different types of fiberglass trailers in person. None of them were in great condition. And then last second, right before I adopted Ezio, my dad stumbled across a listing that didn't even have any pictures yet. It was literally just listed, of a 2002 Scamp, I believe it is. 2000, I think 2002, 2001 or 2002. But like there weren't even pictures up, and I called this guy immediately. It was like probably 10 at night, and I was like, hey, I want this camper. I've been looking for these campers forever. They go so fast. This one is a really good price. I want it, and I will drive. It was 2.5 hours away. I was like, I will drive in the morning as soon as you open to pick up this camper. And of course, the place was closed. It's through a camper dealership. It was closed, and he left me a message in the morning saying, hey, I've had a few people offers lower, but they're further away, so they can't come in person to see it. If you want to come and see it in person and make an offer in person, I'd be willing to hold it. And I was like, hold the phone. I will be there in exactly 2.5 hours. And so my mom and I drove all the way to this camper. It was up in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. It is in really good condition. It is the 13-foot scamp, which is the smaller scamp, which means it weighs less, but it also doesn't have like the bathroom that I didn't need. And so I've been living in the scamp since I think July of 2020. It is currently November. And it's the start of my winter camping in the scamp, and it's been interesting, but so far it's been great. If you are thinking I'm crazy for having 3 dogs in here, yes, I might be a little crazy, but yes, we also do fit, and we fit very comfortably. The one thing that people always tell me is that the dogs are never going to have enough space, but most of the time we're not in the camper anyway. We're outside hiking, or I am running them, or I don't know. One thing that I have started to deal with, because it's winter in the Midwest. We already have snow. It is below freezing. So one thing I am dealing with is condensation in the camper and keeping it warm. But it's a learning curve, and I'm tackling it, and it's been a ton of fun. So thank you for listening to this podcast. If you would give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with your friends if you'd think they'd be interested, that would be awesome. And I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.